Hello, Chick-Ching back with another summary. This time, Halo First Strike, which takes place right after Halo Flood or Halo Combat Evolved, and right before Halo 2. If you haven't seen my summary of Halo Flood, it will be in the description below. Let's begin. Section 0 of the book takes place back on Reach just before John 117 sends Red Team down to the planet, to the orbital Supermac generators, while him, Linda, and James deal with the nav data located on the orbital station. But instead of following Blue Team, this time we join Red Team on their descent down to the planet. Fred was made team leader and has everyone get ready to drop. They board the Pelican, and on their way down, longswords try to escort them but are killed on their way when trying to distract incoming Covenant fighters. But unfortunately, the Spartans are forced to bail out and make a supersonic hard landing due to Seraphs killing the pilot, registering the Pelican unable to be controlled. To do this, they have to jump, and before impact, they have to maximize their hydrostatic gel in their armor or be crushed from the impact in their suits. But even doing it was a gamble, and they were coming in way too hot to have any other options. So all the Spartans jumped, and then Fred and Joshua followed them out. While on the way down, Fred looked around to see how many Spartans were still alive, all still tagged breathing. He reiterated that they should aim for water. If unable to do that, flatten out and try to slow the fall, then tuck into a ball just before impact, maxing out the hydrostatic gel. At 100 meters to go, he tucks into a ball and shields start going down as he brushes against treetops. Once the gel was pumped, he felt like he was getting stabbed by hundreds of tiny knives, pain he hadn't felt since the augmentations. He then slammed through a thick tree trunk and came to a screeching halt. Still alive but unable to see, because his suit had malfunctioned. He then hears Kelly calling to him, needing him to get moving. His vision clears and he gets up asking for a report. Pretty much all Spartans had at least minor injuries, some blown shield generators, broken sensor systems, and a dozen had broken bones and contusions. 6 more had serious injuries. They could fight, but only from fixed positions. 4 of the Spartans had been killed. More Spartans killed on this op than any of the missions previously combined. Fred feels at fault, but Kelly told him he did what he could with a horrible situation. Once they meet up, Joshua sees Marines out in the field. Fred gets with them and apologizing for not being at the battle. The Marines laugh, saying it was only round 1. Fred asks how many are in their company, seeing as they are part of Charlie Company, but they were all that was left. Once they had gotten to the first generator, they set up mines and try making the area a little more defensible. Fred repairs his armor and replaces some of the broken parts with Malcolm 059's suit. He hated taking it from him, but he didn't want to dishonor his fallen comrade either. Fred asks for a sitrep, and Will tells him that the perimeter is secure, but the Covenant is in sight. He tells him of the supplies they had to defend with, most notably a Fury tac nuke. Fred tells him that they can't use it because the EMP will fry the generators. Joshua tells him that things are not looking good from where he is, and shows Fred via uplink of a battalion of Covenant soldiers and more coming down a grav lift from a carrier hovering above the planet, about 30 meters up. Kelly got a transmission from HICOM, and the verification codes had checked out. So Fred had her put it through. A man asked where the hell Charlie Company was since he needed an extraction. Fred tells him that they are gone except for 4 Marines. The man identifies himself as Vice Admiral Danforth Whitcomb, then orders Fred to have his team come extract him. When Fred tells him that his orders are to protect the generators, he tells Fred that he has tactical command of the defense on Reach, and orders him to come get him. Little did he know he was probably safer where he was. But orders are orders. Fred decided that he needed to go on the offensive instead of playing defense and splits the Spartans up into 4 teams. Team Delta, being the 6 severely wounded Spartans and the 4 Charlie Company Marines, would go 16 kilometers north to a ravine where they had trained on Reach, the fallback point for everyone else. They were to get there and secure it for the rest of the team. Team Gamma, which composed of Spartans Lee 008, Anton 044, and Grace 093, would go recover the Vice Admiral. Team Beta is composed of 11 Spartans that are not specifically named in the book that will take defense of the generators. Team Alpha, which had the rest of them, being Fred, Kelly, and Joshua, were going to board the Banshees they had and go kill anything over the hill that wasn't human. To do this, Fred decides that they may actually be able to use the tac nuke after all. They will fly into the Covenant ship and detonate the nuke inside it, since the shields should be able to hold the EMP charge from detonation. A grunt named Zawaz sees them fly in but assumes they are Spec Op elites since they are not on the flight plan. He then goes back to sleep on duty. The 3 Spartans head toward the ship, getting 3 kilometers away before being shot at, dodging most of the shots, and a few that hit don't really do that much damage to take them out, until the ship came to life and shot its plasma at them, connecting with Joshua's Banshee, causing it to go down. Kelly and Fred make it to the grav beam, and Kelly throws the tac nuke up into the ship as they pass through. The ship, they'd continue to fly beyond the ship and land in the trees. Kelly looks for Joshua, but Fred tells him that he was hit on the way in, after not being able to get a response from his comms. they kind of assume that he's probably dead. The nuke detonates and clears out the whole valley the Covenant were in. 10,000 Covenant deaths for Joshua. Not sure the trade was worth it, but at least it was something. Hoping maybe that they bought enough time to hold the generators. But just then, 3 more Covenant ships drop into view. Fred tells the Beta team to fall back, but only hears through static that they are being overwhelmed and can possibly defend one of the other generators, but not for long with Covenant reinforcements. Fred tries to patch through to the Pillar of Autumn and tell them that the generators will be going down, because there's nothing that they can do to prevent it, so Orbital Max will be useless. But he gets no response from anyone. UNSC Majestic was ordered by Central Command to destroy the approaching Covenant forces, but consequently killed all 11 Spartans most likely, with the 6 MAC rounds fired upon the ships. Which really bugs me, because they had to have known the Spartans were in the area, because that is just a huge waste. It would have been better to just let the generators be destroyed by the Covenant and let the Spartans escape. But again, possibly they didn't know, but I feel like they should have. Seeing more Covenant ships dropping in to start bombarding with plasma, Kelly seems to think it's over. But Fred tells her maybe not, tells her to follow him in the Banshee. 3 weeks later, we jump in time to where John is, where he is in system after destroying the Halo Ring. John and Cortana are aboard the Longsword, John having her scan anything they can to see if they can get out of system, since they don't have any slipspace capabilities at the moment. Cortana tells him that there isn't anything out there, but he asks her a couple more times to scan anyway, since they have to find something or else they're going to die without supplies. So Cortana does it, even though she thinks there's no point. John asks if she's doing an active scan, and she gives him a little attitude since there are trillions of objects. He tells her that someone could be hiding from the Covenant, which she doubts, but then the echo that they were hearing starts getting stronger, meaning that it's not an echo. But before they can look further into it, a Covenant cruiser comes into view. And to make things worse, a Covenant flagship shows up that is 3 kilometers long. John has Cortana power everything down except for what she needs to stay online. She piggybacks their scans, noticing that they are using the same frequencies as the UNSC. Odd, since they had never been seen doing that before. Cortana sees that there are cryopods floating among the wreckage. She drops the launch bay door, and the atmosphere vents out, launching them forward without the use of any power. Some thruster usage, but not enough to get detected. While on their way, Cortana sees another contact on the opposite side of a rock, a pelican. Now, Cortana seems to think that crashed there because of how it's angled, but the Master Chief says that it has to be parked and waiting, because the front of the pelican is pointed out. He then heads to the back of the Longsword, hooking up a tether to his suit, and jumps out towards the cryopod. He extends out, grabbing the pods, and starts pulling them in. However, at this point, the Covenant ship seems to notice them and heads towards them. Out of nowhere, the Pelican launches missiles at the ships and starts to dip out, making the Covenant vessel chase. They owed them one. So they chase after them as well after getting back in the Longsword, destroying one of the plasma turrets on the ship by hitting it with missiles as it fires. That way the shield able to do that because the shield can't be up when they fire. John radios the Pelican, getting Warrant Officer Pulaski. He tells her to proceed at maximum burn to a particular spot. He pings, and she follows his orders. Cortana asks him what he's planning, and he just responds with something Keyes would approve of. Proceeding to the same point, they are in line with the enemy flagship. None of the other Covenant vessels would fire on them because stray shots might hit the flagship. Then as they pass the Covenant vessel, turrets couldn't hit them because of their speed. Both human ships start a slingshot orbit around the gas giant, and they connect the Longsword to the Pelican in order to get others from the Pelican on board. The first person he pulls through, he slams against the wall with a gun at his chin, telling him that he was dead when he saw him on Jenkins's feet. Sergeant Johnson smiles and tells him that the Flood can't kill him. Johnson tells him he gets why he thinks he's infected, but he's obviously not showing any signs, and he explains that they didn't seem to like his taste. He then agrees to get a full medical checkup when they get a chance, since he likes the Navy nurses. Then Corporal Locklear in ODST hops up with an assault rifle, yelling clear, but Johnson tells him to relax. Next up is Lieutenant Haverson, who knows John by his number as well, which shocks him a bit since almost nobody knew the Spartans apart, although he probably knew only 2 Spartans were on board the Pillar of Autumn when they left, so probably not really as shocking since he is Oni as well. And finally, Petty Officer Warrant Officer Pulaski hops up and salutes, asking permission to board. John notices that she's from the same unit as Raleigh, or Foehammer, so she's probably a very skilled and passionate pilot. When John tells them they are getting ready to attack the Covenant again, Harrison says that they should prioritize escape, but John agrees. Neither ship has slipspace capabilities, so they are a bit tied. He then gets a bit irked by Harrison when he turns his back to him and seems to assume command. But he lets Harrison know that while he outranks John, John's still in charge because of his orders from High Command, being in charge of everyone on the ship. So he tells everyone to get ready, Harrison setting up mines, Pulaski getting to the front of the longsword ready to pilot, and Locklear grabbing anything else from the Pelican they can use. He hesitates, and John gets in closer to make his orders clear, since the ODSTs generally don't like the Spartans very much, and he eventually listens to his commands. Once everyone is all set, Cortana leads the Pelican ahead of them to distract them while they aim for the docking bay of the flagship. Pulaski navigating well, making Cortana a bit jealous somehow. The Master Chief also realizes that him and Locklear are more alike than he first realized, not liking space fighting whatsoever. They eventually crash into the docking bay while the mines from the Pelican blow up on impact and send others out to attack Seraphs. Everyone alive and okay, ready to start the next part of the mission, which turns out to be the harder part. Once the bay is cleared out by Pulaski, they start their way to the bridge. Cortana is then put into the ship to better direct them there, and once there, she can be inserted to take over the ship completely. Once close, John, Harrison, and Pulaski go one way while Johnson and Locklear go another to increase odds of getting in. Chief opens a door, killing the elite holding it, and starts fighting another in hand-to-hand combat. However, because along the way John's shield unit is damaged, he no longer has them. Both elite and Spartan struggle to get an edge over the other until John pushes the elite into the spot where the Marines are trying to open, having the energy sword pierce his armor into his shoulder. Ordering the Marines to fire through it, they down the elite's shields and eventually kill it. He then gets to the center of the room at the command console, Cortana guiding him to give her access. Although, during the time Cortana was in the ship, there seemed to be another Covenant AI present. Once taken over, the other ships seem to start shooting at them, but they can't slip space out because the Covenant on board had made the generator inert. So John decides he will go down and fix it so they can leave, taking an engineer with him so they can fix it. He kills a group of Ungoi and gets the engineer to the point where he needs to fix. Cortana guiding the flagship in a tight orbit, trying to avoid all plasma shots toward their ship, but she gets too deep into the atmosphere. So John tells her to just try something. Anything, since they were probably about to die anyway, so just wing it. So she tries to enter slipspace coordinates from within orbit, and it works. They entered slipspace, safe from the other cruisers. When traveling through slipspace, everyone gathers up, and an engineer keeps trying to get behind the Master Chief, but he makes sure it can't, making the poor thing agitated. Cortana tells him to let it repair his shield unit, and so he does. Harrison asks Cortana if a slipspace jump had ever been attempted so close to a planet, and Cortana tells him no. But because of the Covenant technology being far superior to the humans, especially in slipspace travel, she was able to more accurately jump. John tells everyone that it only matters that it works, so now they can plan the next move of their mission, which is to capture a Prophet. Harrison tells them that they should go back to Earth because of the technology they have on the Covenant ship. It could change the tide of the war, plus all the information from the Halo Ring and Cortana. Even gives John an out, stating that with all of this that had been going on, he would be well within his right to recheck his orders. Locklear wants to know what the other mission is, and Harrison tells John that he doesn't see the point in keeping it a secret any longer, which again bugs John, since he agreed that John was in command, but told him to reveal classified information. Cortana makes sure that there isn't anyone listening, and then the Spartan tells everyone about the original mission. Locklear calls it suicide. Pulaski tells him that they barely had survived the past 4 days, and Harrison tells him that none of them are Spartans. Sergeant Johnson, however, tells him that if he still wants to go on that mission, he will be there with him. But John even sees that the man is exhausted. Locklear agrees with Harrison that they should go back to Earth, but John lets him know this isn't a democracy. Locklear tells him that he reports to the Corps, and not some swabby, as he calls it. Johnson rails into him at that point, and Locklear backs down, saying that he just really hates this shit. Cortana finally says that she agrees with Harrison and that they should return to Earth. Puzzled by this at first, John asks Cortana why she wants to back out of the mission. She just states that again, with the new technology and slow space capabilities that they could get from the ship, that would increase the odds of winning the war. So John finally agrees and gives tactical command to Harrison. Once Harrison has it, he gives out new orders. He asks Cortana to plot a course to Earth, but they can't because of some protocol that prevents taking Covenant vessels to human-controlled space without checking the ship for tracking devices. John suggests an intermediate destination, Reach. Harrison tells him that there's nothing there, but John just tells him that there are two possibilities. The Covenant glassed the planet and left, meaning that they could hopefully find a UNSC craft, repair it, and use it to get back to Earth, leaving the flagship in low orbit to come back later. Or the Covenant are still there, and most likely won't attack the flagship of theirs. Either way, they won't go against the Cold Protocol since they already know Reach's location. Harrison agrees, so they decide to go, which should take about 13 hours. Then they get a call from Johnson about the cryo tubes from the longsword. One of them is a Spartan. We know this as Linda. After John leaves to head to the Pelican, Harrison is looking at the engineer that repaired the Spartan shields. Then, before Cortana can ask what he's doing, he shoots it in the back of the head. Cortana asks him what the hell he's doing, and he looks at her full of anger, saying that it was surprised that she even had to ask, since it had saw what they had in the suit if it were to fall into enemy hands, they would get their new technology, which isn't really how it works, but nobody really knows that yet. After a brief moment, Cortana tells him that she understands. Then Harrison asks her if the Master Chief will find what he's really looking for on Reach, the Spartans. 3 weeks earlier, 5 days after the attack on Reach back on UNSC HICOM on Earth, Lieutenant Wagner was on his way to a meeting with some higher-ups. Not many knew that Reach had fallen at all, was a secret among the brass on Earth. Once he had entered the room, he saw men at a table. Major General Nicholas Strauss, not really notable, Fleet Admiral Terrence Hood, very notable, and Colonel James Ackerson, very notable, and 6 other people of command ranks. The general leaned forward, angry that they didn't know about the sheer amount of Covenant ships. Ackerson says that there isn't anyone to blame but the Covenant, but is upset that their fleet was decimated, unable to respond to the attack, which, for being outnumbered and not knowing that they were coming, they did a damn good job. It should have been a lot worse. Admiral Hood tells Wagner that he'd like to hear about the attack from him, anything that he may have missed. So he goes over it again, explaining that when they started glassing, it was only at the poles, which is very odd. Then he gets a bit emotional since he had trained on Reach. Admiral Hood nods his sympathy, but Ackerson, on the other hand, just goes off asking if all of Reach was glassed. The way he says it gives off the vibe that he really wants it to be. You know, that way the Spartans were dead along with Halsey. He says that when he left, only the poles were being glassed, but much of the planet was on fire. So Ackerson takes that as everyone's dead, naming Admiral Whitcomb and Halsey, calling it a tragedy, but there's no sympathy in his voice. General Strauss mentions how good the Spartan 2s were, and Ackerson shoots him a look that could kill, which is crazy since it was such a breach in military protocol. A general was shying away from a junior officer. Ackerson was higher up than his rank showed. After some silence, Admiral Hood asks Wagner about the Pillar of Autumn, since it wasn't in his after-action report due to Section 3's secure list. He tells him that the ship jumped and was followed by a number of other Covenant vessels, which Hood is pleased with, that maybe they had gotten away or are possibly still on mission. Ackerson, however, is an ass at this point, to put it lightly, and states that there is no way in hell the Pillar of Autumn would have been able to. Might as well have just shot them in the head and gotten it over with. Like, damn dude, really? Admiral Hood at this point has had enough, and lets Ackerson know it. Wagner actually agrees with Ackerson a little, since before jumping, the Pillar of Autumn sent most of the Spartans to the ground to try and defend the generators, which makes Ackerson happy. Word for word saying that Halsey's freaks have finally lost their luster of invincibility. Hood goes off at this point, stating that the Spartans deserve the utmost respect, even from him, and if he doesn't want to do that, he will remove him from his new position on the Security Council. Ackerson tries to defend himself, but Hood continues to put him in his place. Thank God. The Spartans had more confirmed kills than any 3 division of ODSTs, and more medals as well, saving his life and most of the higher-ups at HICOM, making sure Ackerson understands, or at least tells him that he does. Strauss wants to send a force to see what is left of Reach, but Ackerson says that they should defend the inner colonies. Wagner tells him the last thing he didn't think to put in his report, but that while they started glassing Reach, they only glassed the poles, which he did actually mention, and didn't hit the center of the planet at all. So something must be there that they want to recover. Wagner volunteers to go on any expeditions if one is to be sent. Ackerson is appalled by this and lectures Wagner, asking them if he's blind or deaf about what happened on Reach, and nobody defends him for some reason, ending with Ackerson telling him that everyone on Reach is dead, dead, dead. What a likable guy, right? But that is where we will leave off with this summary. Hope you all enjoyed it, and if anyone has any questions or comments, leave them below. Part 2 will be in the description as well. Thanks for watching. Chick Chang out.